All right, we'll give it a minute here to let the technology kind of catch up and let our folks trickle in. Ariel, sorry, you're running this first part. I'll let you do it.
Yeah, you're good. I was like, yes, exactly. We were given 30 seconds. Kelsey's got it. I'll head out.
No, you are good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to give it, just like Kelsey said, 30 seconds so everybody can get in. I see the numbers rising just a little bit.
So Ariel and Jacob, I wanted to know, do you, I saw Kelsey does, do you guys have green screens behind you or?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, it's a
So that's the
green
best way to make that work. Okay.
Yes.
We look
I have
like
the blue screen behind me.
It looks good.
It's actually
look-
pink.
we
Oh,
look
it's
like
pink.
bugs because it's like this big green circle. So it kind of looks like these big green wings behind us.
Uh-huh.
It's fun. But awesome, guys. I'll go ahead and kickstart this off for everyone. My name is Ariel Rafua, and I just wanted to formally introduce you guys to the TRA Marketplace 2020 virtual version. This is our first time. We hope you guys are enjoying it as much as we are as well. Today's session is called Immigration Policy, so you will get to hear from some great speakers who we will introduce shortly. And I know you guys have probably now interacted with this button, but there is a Q&A button down below. If you guys have any questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to ask it. We will try to get to it during, or we will make some time at the end to answer them. And without further delay, I'd like to introduce to you guys our sponsor for today's stage, Coca-Cola. Thank you so much, Coca-Cola Southwest Beverages, for sponsoring the Silicon Hill stage. We do have a quick video for you.
We at the Coca-Cola Company believe the health of our water sources is essential to the health of our communities, which is why we're helping to replenish the mighty Rio Grande, as well as over 30 watersheds across the country. We're also leading water projects in more than 100 communities. And for every drop we use, we're working to give one back, because our products rely on the same thing as we all do: clean water. And we care about it like our business depends on it.
Yes, cheers to Coca-Cola. If you guys have one, go grab one from the fridge. Super refreshing. But to kick off the session, I'd like to introduce to you guys Kelsey Strufert, who is our Vice President of Government Relations and Advocacy for the Texas Restaurant Association. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you, Ariel, and thank you to our great panelists and to everyone tuning in today. This is such a timely topic, immigration reform, and we've really got a panel of experts here with me to talk about it. So I'm so grateful. We're going to do something a little different this time and let our panelists introduce themselves, just to make it a little more personable and a little more fun, frankly. So Angelo, I'll start with you. Can you give us a quick bio rundown?
Sure. My quick bio rundown is that I head the Restaurant Law Center for the National Restaurant Association. So I'm dealing with immigration now from the litigation side. Before that, I did the policy for the association on immigration. Before that, I was with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce heading their immigration practice. And before that, I was with the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And I guess that's where my call to fame on the immigration circles go, because that's where back in late 1999, 2000, I helped draft the DREAM Act in those days when it was still a bipartisan bill. So I'm glad to still be talking about it today. So I'll stop there.
Like I said, true immigration experts. Thanks, Angelo. And Angelo's on vacation and is still taking the time to do this with us today. Have to give him that little shout out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ator, let's go to you next. Can you give us a quick little bio rundown?
Sure. I'm in in 1984. Most of the refugees started, in restaurant business, and I was a janitor in Los Angeles. Started in '84, moved my way up, and became a manager in a couple of years. I've been in corporation of Jack in the Box. I worked in corporate office for a long time, and then I've been a franchisee since 2005. And I live in Houston, outside of Houston, and in Sugar Land. and I have a business in Houston and in San Antonio. So I'm excited to be part of this panel.
Thank you. We're so grateful to have you with us to share your perspective today. All right,
Thank
Jacob, take us home. Quick bio introduction.
Great. Well, I'm Jacob Monty. I'm a labor and immigration lawyer here in Houston. I have been talking about immigration reform at the TRA for more than 20 years. We keep saying it's just around the corner. It's here and it's coming, right? And it hasn't come yet, but we restaurateurs and allied services we're optimistic, and we know that eventually we will see some immigration reform, but it certainly hasn't happened yet. There's so much desperation among the worker in the restaurant, though, because it even in the time of COVID, there is hope for immigration reform. And I can't get over how optimistic the immigrant is. Even as they're dealing with COVID, they haven't gotten down. They're still working. They're still seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe it's not going to happen, but they haven't gotten the message yet to be bummed out about it. Certainly, there are some issues that we're going to talk about that are making it a challenge, particularly now during COVID. We're going to talk about USCIS. They're having some huge financial issues right now. Some of their workers are on furlough, dealing with that. And then here in Texas, we're having to deal with something that impacts employers. The Attorney General has recently started to notify restaurateurs and other employers when they submit their new hire information if the person's social security number matches or not. And gosh, restaurants have enough to deal with right now with COVID, having to deal with the Texas Attorney General now volunteering to tell us that our new hires social isn't a good match with the name is causing some turmoil for restaurants. And we'll talk about that some more, but I'm an immigration lawyer and a strong supporter of TRA.
Well, and vice versa. Y'all are such great partners. And speaking of partners, before we really dive into the topic, have to thank forward.us. They are a tremendous partner and ally with us as we work through immigration as a policy issue that we care about, and have been huge supporters of TRA Marketplace, and just great partners of TRA. So want to be sure and take a minute to thank them. I also just kind of want to set the stage for a minute. I'm sure there's some folks that saw this on the schedule and thought, immigration, why is that part of TRA Marketplace? And one of the things that I have really been talking more and more about is that immigration is a huge issue for our industry. We know immigrants are a huge part of our workforce. They're a huge part of our customer base. They're a huge part of our supplier base. And they're just a huge part of Texas and kind of what makes Texas strong and safe and have a vibrant economy or not, right? Immigration is vital to all of those questions. And so, we don't have all the answers at TRA. We're not necessarily the immigration experts. Angelo probably has all the answers. But we know that our system needs some updates, needs some reforms. We know that we need safety and security, but we also need a vibrant workforce and a system that allows immigrants to be here, to work, to contribute to our society, to pay taxes, raise a family, all of those great things. So that's kind of just a little nugget to get us started, if we will. But I want to bring our panelists in because y'all are truly the experts. So Angelo, let's start with you. From your position at National, can you give us kind of a lay of the land, if you will? Where are we on immigration issues right now as a country? I know, just summarize that in like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
no.
like in 2 seconds, right?
Yeah, kind of set the framework for us if you can.
So what I would start is like, I was exchanging emails with Jacob earlier in the week. And one of the things that we were discussing is we are having immigration reform as we speak. The problem is that it's not the immigration reform that we want and the immigration reform that we as an industry need. I would say that you would have noticed if you're in the restaurant industry, H-2Bs, the program that we have for temporary workers, is now harder to get workers. They added a restriction where you have to certify, and let me for a second read. You have to certify that without the H-2B worker, you will suffer irreparable harm. And then open your books for the attorney from Texas or the US government to come in and make sure that that's true. I mean, this is, and then they froze all new entries. So you weren't in the country already on an H-2B visa or on a J-1 visa, you're not coming in. They're creating exceptions, but they're very few and far between. So what we have seen is reform go the way of more and more restrictions. I think we have a lack of, it's not that we have a lack of leadership, but we have a lack of stature when it comes to leadership on both sides to be able to move the kind of immigration reform. And again, I'm not trying to be partisan, so I'll start by naming somebody that is no longer in office. But you know, when George W. Bush was in the White House, you know, he commanded the leadership for the Republican Party on immigration and was pushing for immigration reform. And Senator Kennedy and Senator McCain in the Senate were working together to push this forward. Right now, what we have is individuals that want to work on certain pieces. You have like Ron Johnson of Wisconsin and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, to name two Republicans, you know, willing to work on something. And then you have Chuck Schumer and Menendez, but I'm not trying to offend them, but it's not the same level of being able to bring everybody together. And then we have others, and again, I'll mention Texas. Ted Cruz is, for example, is not somebody that has been on our side of the immigration reform debate. But again, since we're in Texas, I'll mention that Representative Will Hurd was one of the members that was trying to look for a solution to DACA. As far as laws being signed this year for what's left, I don't see it. I mean, we are already in full election mode. Politics, between good policy and good politics, politics always wins in Washington. And I don't think the Democrats would allow Trump to have a victory in immigration or vice versa. So what we have is a lot of litigation on DACA, which I hope we'll get to talk about some more. And just yesterday, I believe, or the day before, the Attorney General Becerra in California filed yet another lawsuit on DACA. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of movement at the executive level, DHS, USCIS, and because of that, because it's moving without the background of laws being passed, you're going to see more litigation and more cases. So there will be movement, but it's probably not in Congress.
Got it. Atur, can you give us some of your perspective and story, both, you know, as an immigrant into this country and also as someone who's running businesses? You know, what is the immigration system? What has that looked like for you?
Thanks. My perspective is a perspective of an immigrant. So I was born in Iran, raised until age of 18. I had to escape Iran. I was captured, put in jail for 40 days in Turkey. And when I came to the United States, I have never lost that perspective of a person like me that is trying to come to this country, not to break the law, but to come in basically to work and to do whatever is possible to make a living for themselves. So we were just talking earlier, I was telling the team, you know, that we were talking about COVID and everything else that is going on. When you compare everything that is happening in our life to what people like me have gone through in their journey of life, is just gives you a different perspective. So as an immigrant, when I started working here, I came to basically make a better living for myself. I escaped, you know, my situation in my country. And, you know, I don't think most people like me coming here, I believe they don't come to get handouts. They don't come to get somebody else's job. They come to honestly work and pay taxes. I have never collected one penny from any source of government, you know, body. I've been here 36 years. I have worked from $3.35 minimum wage all the way to where I'm at. Money is really not the issue. Money comes and goes, but everything that we have in this country is possible because of who this country is, what we are and who we are. So I believe we're all part of that immigrant family. So we're coming in to melt into this environment and be part of this beautiful, amazing history, this country. So I know we have a lot of challenges, but with all our challenges, this is the best place on planet Earth. With the businesses, it's very difficult to find people, to find employees. It's very difficult to hire nowadays, especially. So we do all the necessary things to hire the right people. But I believe we need some sort of a immigration policy that helps businesses and helps individuals to come to this country legally and work in this country and pay taxes and grow the economy. So most of us came at some point as an immigrant to this country. And I think if we close our doors to that legal immigration, we're giving up a little bit of our own history. So,
Absolutely.
I have 2 kids, they are born here, and I talk to them all. And I could talk more, but I know tell me how you want to move this conversation forward.
Sounds great. Tor, we're breaking up a little bit on your audio, but hopefully it'll get better connected there. Jacob, let's turn to you for a minute.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We hear you now. It just breaks up a tiny bit.
Okay.
Jacob, talk to us about some of the issues that employers face when it comes to the immigration system right now. You gave us a teaser earlier, but let's dive into some of those issues, especially as we're dealing with COVID.
Well, the biggest issue is there's a labor shortage even now with COVID, and employers in our industry can't find workers. It's hard, and it's not a function of money. I mean, we can't find employees at $10, $12, $15. I mean, there's a lack of people that want to do the work, and it's so that is a big issue. The other problem is we are seeing a lot of enforcement where employers are having to contend with ICE. The biggest way an employer can get on ICE's radar screen is when someone has their identity stolen and they start getting revenue reported to their social, and they're upset about it, and we call that the innocent bystander victim of identity theft. But that is driving a lot of ICE's investigations. Why? Because the innocent bystander calls ICE.
Right.
There's an office inside ICE called Voice where you can report if someone is doing something and they're an undocumented person, and ICE will trigger an inspection of that employer. And that is, what we advise employers to do in that situation is, if you have an innocent bystander that calls your restaurant and says, "I've never worked at your restaurant, you're reporting revenue to my number," solve the matter for that innocent bystander victim so they don't go to ICE. And maybe you can solve the problem, file an amended W-2C report so that revenue gets away from their social, and you avoid the ICE scrutiny that might happen. But that's one issue. The new issue that happened recently, employers have so much paperwork to fill out. When we hire new employees in Texas, we have to let the Attorney General know to find out if any of these new hires have outstanding child support orders. They should be focused on child support issues, telling employers, hey, by the way, this new hire's name doesn't match with the social. That's not helpful, and it creates more concern for employers. What we're telling employers to do in that situation is continue to employ them. I mean, this is not a notice from Social Security or from ICE, but it also drives home the point that you need to make sure your I-9s are in good order. And doing self-audits is very important. I-9s are still, certainly required in COVID. There is an exception now that you can actually do a remote I-9. You don't actually have to have the person right in front of you. You could do it via Zoom, and that is something that is allowed right now under COVID. But I-9s are still required. We encourage employers to make sure that you do a self-audit. Don't get sloppy by not having I-9s right now, because ICE is looking. And so a lot of issues facing employers. Employers are hoping for immigration reform too. I mean, it's not just the immigrants. I've been coming to TRA for 20 years, and it's actually the employers that are hammering for it also. It seems like we could, unite a willing worker with a willing employer. It sounds simple. That's what George W. Bush was trying to say, and it hasn't happened yet, but I'm hopeful. Some people have accused me of being a Pollyanna. It's going to get better, but I do think that the politicians are going to have to see that our industry needs it. And really our food supply depends on immigrants. Whether you look at the protein production, vegetable production, fruit and vegetable, it's all based on immigrant labor, and certainly the restaurant industry. So it's a problem, but it's a problem that I think we can solve. We got to get the politicians on board, to be sure, though.
I think that's right. And Angelo, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about, when we talk about immigration reform that, most Americans would support, right? What are some of the kind of pillars that consistently, no matter your party, no matter kind of your industry, that people generally rally around?
Well, they are. I used to be a big believer that you needed comprehensive immigration reform. I am of the belief that now that whatever we can pass, we should pass, even if it's piecemeal. So if you had asked me several years ago, I would say, no, DACA has to be part of comprehensive immigration reform or the DREAM Act. Now I'm a believer that if you can legalize 1 million and then deal with another 1 million, let's do it that way. But when you look at immigration reform from the perspective of the restaurant industry and from the perspective of the allies in the community, what you're looking at is you have the issue of legalization, which everybody understands as, the people that have been here a long time, whether they're children, parents, and then you have surveys show that there's different amount of support for different groups, but we're talking about the general population, since you have to draw the line somewhere. Then the second piece, there's 4 pieces actually. The second piece is, of course, the border. Everybody understands it's a big issue in Texas, because unlike Arizona, people in Washington don't seem to understand that a lot of that land is actually private property. So you're talking about taking land away from ranchers and others. And it is very interesting, before I go into the other 2, is Cuccinelli, which is now on enforcement, used to be our attorney general here in Virginia. And a lot of his ad had people jumping over a fence of some kind to come illegally into Virginia. And I didn't know whether those were North Carolinians or West Virginians, but they were coming illegally. But I love Texas because they actually understand the border. But border, and when we talk about border, a big issue that we always fought was there's also legal crossings, and the economy in Texas and other states that require those parts to move quickly from Mexico to the Toyota plant in Texas. So you have the border. Then you have interior enforcement, and that's where your I-9s, E-Verify, and other things. So we've come up with a system that works in the future. And the hardest piece of them all is, what do we do so in the future we don't have this problem? And that's the one that I think I spent most of my life at the chamber and at the restaurant when I was lobbying on the issue, which is, how do you create a system like the high skills immigration system, which exists with H-1Bs? There's no comparable program for restaurants and hospitality. So what we're doing is we're relying on programs that are there now that are not created for our needs, whether it's H-2B, which is not year long, or J-1, which is cultural exchanges, and others. So those are the 4 pieces. It sounds easy, and I think it's easier than they make it in Congress, but you have the border, you have interior enforcement, what to do with the people here, and how to allow people to come in an orderly fashion legally, those that are willing to work and those that are willing and able to hire them. And I will mention one last thing that Jacob alluded to. The decisions that are being made with regards to COVID-19, like blocking H-2B entries and others, those are political decisions being made under an economic presumption, the presumption that we have COVID-19, people are at home, so now we have more Americans willing to take these jobs. And that's not necessarily true for every occupation. I mean, it's true for many occupations, but that doesn't mean there was no analysis made before the closing of our borders to, and we're only talking about 15,000 visas.
I'd love to bring a tour into that discussion, because that's something we hear a lot about, right? Is the struggle to find a willing and ready workforce. That was certainly a problem before COVID, and I think probably even tougher now. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, Ator, as a business owner and operator.
Yes, everything you said is true. We had difficulty hiring people when the economy was booming. And we use all sort of social media, all sort of tools that you could imagine. We usually verify in our company. We do anything and everything that we can to hire the right people. And with COVID, unfortunately, we all know what has happened, and we're having a tough time finding people right now. I mean, we have situations that we have paid people just overtime, double time, to have them come and just fill the regular shift, because it's difficult to staff up the restaurants. So I think something from again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not involved in, all the laws and stuff, but I will just tell you from my perspective as a business owner, we need to have a system that is very simple to follow, to do the right things, to hire the right people. So, I understand all the legal immigration conversations and stuff like that. So we're not looking for any shortcuts. I think I could speak for a lot of people around me. We're looking for something that we could just, in a way, turn it on in our computers and hire the right people and put them to work if they're willing to work, and just follow the standards. So sometimes it's very difficult, as you
Absolutely.
owner has to do. And smaller you are, is more difficult to accomplish it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Jacob mentioned this earlier, it's hard enough kind of running a business in the best of times. Then you add on top of that COVID-19 regulations that seem to change, sometimes on a daily or weekly basis. Yeah, on a dime. And then you've got changing immigration rules and procedures and paperwork, and it's a lot. And I think we have to keep reminding folks that there's a real cost to all of this, right? Anytime you're spending,
Yes.
dealing with paperwork, dealing with government bureaucracy, is time is money, and that adds to the cost, and makes it harder to be a profitable business, again, in the best of times. Then you add COVID on top of that.
Yes. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, people like me got in the business. I was just going to say very quickly, people like me got in business to, serve our customers, we call them guests, people around us, be, positive, place for, our neighborhood, to get people to come to our location, serving good food, good drinks. It's difficult to get into all the paperwork and stuff like that. So,
Absolutely.
We're expert at serving good burgers, good food, good chicken, good fries, good drinks, but not very expert when it comes to other things. So
yeah, I'm craving some curly fries right now, just looking at your Jack in the Box logo behind you. Let's talk a little bit about Doc. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Jack in the Box for lunch. No, go ahead. I'm done.
No,
Sorry,
you're good. I was going to say, let's talk a little bit about DACA. That's one of the issues that I think, really galvanizes people, in large part because I think most of us can relate to, coming somewhere as a child and not having control over that, right? And trying to make the most of your opportunities and your circumstances. So Jacob or Angelo, could one of you kind of give us a status update on what the heck's going on with DACA? Or how about Jacob, why don't you give us an update on where we stand with DACA now? And then Angelo will ask for some kind of insight on what you think we could hope for moving forward on DACA.
Okay, well, we got some great news from the Supreme Court. Justice Roberts wrote the opinion, and it basically said that while the administration could rescind DACA because it was an executive order, they didn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act. So they didn't do it properly. And it put DACA where it was before the rescission happened, which is important because before the rescission happened, new DACA applications were being accepted, and advanced parole documents for DACA people that needed to travel travel abroad so that they could come back into the country with a lawful entry and adjust through another way were being issued. So if you look at the decision, the administration should start accepting new DACA applications for people that have never applied before, and they should start accepting advanced parole documents. Unfortunately, that has not happened because the administration is committed to using immigration, especially now in the election. So they're not following through with that order. They're dragging their feet. They have indicated that they are going to attempt to rescind DACA again, although that hasn't happened yet, primarily because DACA is popular even with Republicans. I mean, I've seen some polls that say 80% of Republicans think that the DACA kids should be able to stay. So this is an interesting situation because it's popular with both camps, yet we can't seem to get it solved yet. Let me just mention, there is fortunately a court solution here, aside from the Supreme Court, and that is important because thanks to litigation, DACA recipients were able to continue to allow their DACA status to be renewed. So a Maryland court has said that the administration must start accepting new DACAs and new advanced parole documents, and that's where we are now. Angelo.
Perfect handoff.
So I would say Jacob is the ultimate optimist. Yes, that was the good side of the opinion, as Jacob said, was that those that had DACA got to keep it for a little while. Those that wanted to apply have been applying. The administration said that you can only apply for a year and that they were going to deny all pre-existing applications. He just got sued by Xavier Becerra, the Attorney General, saying it has to be for 2 years. You cannot deny. We're going to see what the courts say. Now, on the Supreme Court decision, I think the flip side of that is it also gave the administration the blueprint on how to undo DACA. It said that, well, you did it wrong, and he did do it wrong. That's the only reason that it got to the Supreme Court. Well, you did it wrong. It doesn't mean you cannot undo it. Clearly, if a president can do it by executive action, another president, usually the law would allow for you to undo it, but you have to follow our process. So it is what it signals to me is that it's clear that there has to be a congressional fix to DACA. There is plenty of support from Republicans and Democrats. I'll remind people that the name DREAM and the DREAM Act was the original Republican bill. It was Orrin Hatch, Republican of Utah, who introduced the first DREAM Act. I had worked on the Democratic version for Senator Durbin, was the Student Adjustment Act. And so it has always been kind of like a bipartisan bill. I am optimistic that it will happen, but not this year. I will caution that one of the problems that DACA created, and I think this is always something we need to be worried about, is the fact that if it's allowed to pass, it gives power to the executive branch to do certain things by executive. And just like maybe you like when Obama did it, but now we see a lot of executive actions from Trump that people are not liking, and that is a problem, because if I believe that this is a great moment for Congress to take back their authority and say, whether you like or you dislike DACA, let's do it through the legislative system. Because one thing I caution people is the president is thinking about, there's a not so secret about a potential new merit-based immigration system. And if the US were to move to something like that to allow people to come in, at the end of the day, this system is not created to allow restaurant workers or hospitality workers to be able to come in. And I'll mention one more thing that I think is interesting COVID-19 has been brought forward. the workers in our industry are, in the immigration parlance, are referred to as low-skilled workers. The Immigration Coalition in Washington has always called it essential workers. And I find it interesting that those same occupations during COVID-19, suddenly everybody decided they are essential workers, and therefore they need to take risks that you and I and me sitting here at home and a tour sitting at home do not have to face because they're now essential workers. So I do think they are essential workers, and we need to find a solution moving forward. But in DACA, I hope Congress will again, and there's plenty, Diaz-Balart, another Republican, you know, there's plenty of people willing to work on a solution for DACA.
That's a great point. And I think it's so interesting, your point about, you know, this high skill versus essential worker split. And that's such an important thing for our industry to be cognizant of, because as you said, COVID has really shown us that we need to kind of reevaluate how we value people, because I tell you what, when that crisis hit and you needed to go to the grocery store and get toilet paper, or, you know, your local Jack in the Box to get a meal. I think people, even now with schools, right, going virtual, people are really appreciating their teachers, I think, like never before. And so, you know, immigrants are part of this whole story, and we need them to continue to be. What else? What are the other kind of, you know, DACA gets a lot of the limelight, as it should, but what are some of the other issues that, you know, we as an industry should be taking note of and should be asking for when it comes to immigration reform?
Well, I'll jump in and just say something quickly. I think it's very important that the hardest piece when immigration starts moving again will be for employers to get a legal path for people to be able to come in. The bill in Congress from Lois Mucker, the Workforce for an Expanding Economy Act, I think it's important. It was introduced twice, but there is no incentive really for Democrats or Republicans to move it forward. The constituency that is pushing each side, whether it's family-based visas or unions in the Democratic side, do not tend to look at these programs favorably. And then Republicans, you know, have these back and forth on immigration with their base. But I think that unless we shout loud and clear as the business community for a program that serves our industry, we would end up with fixes to H-1B, to the high scale, a merit-based system that, and I'll point something out that I read. The point-based system they're talking about is comparable to the one in Canada. They have a point system, and Australia. And Prince Harry would not qualify for a visa under the point system because he doesn't have a college degree. So if Prince Harry cannot get into Canada under this system, you can bet you're not going to be able to get a cook under a new merit-based system in the US. So when this starts coming out, I would tell you, you know, pay attention. They're going to say it's a system for everybody, but that's not what we need. We need a program that is created for our industry. Ag has it, tech has it, others have it. I think we need one as well.
Great point. Jacob, Ator, anything to add on that point?
I would go back to.
Go ahead, Ator.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So again, my point of view is a human point of view. So I came here to this country when I was 19 years old, and sometimes I came legally, like I said, and I've been here for 36 years. But sometimes I think if I had brought my kids, let's say I didn't have kids back then, but if I had kids and I brought them with me and they were only a year old or so, and they grew up here, in their mind, they're from this country and they have zero connection to where I came from. So for me to act or for somebody to send them back is really, is putting the two kids that I have in a lifestyle and in danger, in a lifestyle that they have no clue how to navigate. So to me, this is really not a right or left issue. To me, this issue of DACA or kids that came here when they were small is really a human issue. We're a passionate country, so we need to remember that. So I think we could all agree, you know, if we send the kids that were 6 months, a year old back to where they came from with their parents, it would really, really put their life in danger. They're in their mind and everybody around them, they're American. So
That's
I
such
just
an
see my
important point.
kids. One is 19. Yeah. I have two kids, one 19, one 21. If God forbid, let's say they had to leave this country and go and live in Iran today, they will be devastated. So I don't know how they will live through that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think we always have to remember the human part of this, right? We talk a lot about that with COVID. These aren't just businesses, you know, that are four walls and some stuff inside. They're people who have spent, in many cases, like a tour, their whole lives working up and saving and building up to create that business. So I appreciate you bringing that in, because it's so important. Jacob, thoughts on that?
Yeah, the point I would make is a lot of people are still ignorant of the fact that there is no solution. If you entered without inspection, you can't get sponsored, you can't get fixed. We used to have something called 245I that if allowed you to regularize your status if you qualified for a visa by paying $1,000 fine. That 245I law expired in 2001, April of 2001. So there's still a lot of people who think, well, they must want to be legal, or why don't they go see a lawyer? Every day we have to tell people there's nothing we can do for you. We have to tell that to employers who bring us a manager and say, we'll pay whatever to fix him. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do because our immigration framework won't allow you to regularize your status. And then we have heartbreaking situations as well with kids who want to sponsor a parent. You know, even if they're 21, we can sponsor them, but they would have to go back to their home country and wait 10 years for the bar to run out. So the system is completely broken, and I think that, you know, a lot of people still don't understand that there's no legal way to regularize your status if you're here without status. And I would say that we need to figure out a way to have a new 245I or another way to regularize people that are here without status. A lot of them are married to US citizens. They qualify for a visa, but they would have to face going back to their home country and wait or possibly wait to see if they're given a waiver that may or may not be granted. We need to figure out a way to fix the people that are here.
Yeah, such a great point. And so many of those people, as you mentioned, have spouses or kids who are citizens. And so, you know, they are part of the community. I think that's such an important point to make, right? It's not about allowing them to be part of the community. They are part of the community. And so how do we help them to kind of be on paper as such, right? So that they can pay taxes and have a job and do all of the things that we want our citizens to be doing. So we got a great question from one of our viewers I want to make sure we get to before we run out of time here. And that's the public charge denials. How's that being handled? And are there some new ways to overcome that public charge rule? What's happening in that space? Angela, I'll kick that over to you.
So first, I'll let Jacob talk about the legality on the public charge rule. What we have to prove in Washington, and I think, you know, there are more and more studies to be able to do that, is to show that there's really not a public charge given the what they create to the economy, particularly when we're talking about people coming with work visas. Whether it's H-2Bs or others. But I know there's also some additional requirements. I'll let Jacob. And by the way, hello, Al Flores. I know he has a question, a good friend as well. But Jacob, do you want to address the new requirements?
Absolutely. Let me say that, you know, the idea was, it's been in the immigration and the INA, Immigration Nationality Act, that you don't want to bring people that will take benefits. That has always been there. What's happened under the Trump administration, though, has been to expand the notion of who is actually going to take benefits. And they've gotten very strict. I'm dealing with a case right now in Ciudad Juarez where they're not allowing my client to come back into the country because they're saying he doesn't earn enough money based on his income. But what that has resulted in is his wife and family who are US citizens now they're on welfare because he has not been able to come back into the country. So it's a vicious circle. They're saying, oh, you don't earn enough to be allowed to come in, but because he's still stuck in Ciudad Juarez, his family's having to go on public assistance. So this has been primarily done in the Trump era to reduce the number of immigrants that are coming on. There have been some judicial challenges to the public charge rule, but it's alive and well right now, and practitioners are having to deal with it. Different ways, affidavits of support, where this is one area where you can have someone agree to be a sponsor for you to ensure that you won't take public benefits. I have never had anyone who has filled out an affidavit of support ever be called to have to respond to the government because one of the immigrants ended up on welfare or on government assistance. It never happens. Atur, you said it. The immigrants, like you, they're not on welfare. They never take welfare. They're here to work, not to take welfare.
Exactly right.
So, but it is still a big challenge.
All right, we're really at time, but I want to give us kind of one quick kind of wrap up question, if you will, to bring everyone back into it. So just really briefly, why do you think that restaurant operators, employees, why should we care about immigration as an industry? Atur, I'll start with you since you have such a personal stake in this. Oh, we might have lost him. All right,
Yeah,
Angela,
maybe. I think,
oh, there he is.
it's not so much, I don't know, I have a bad connection, so I apologize for that. So this is really, immigration is really the United States story. I know we should care about it from restaurant industry, but, we're part of this culture, we're part of this country, and we should care because it's the right thing to do. We should care because, most of us are immigrant, most of the immigrants start in this business. So I don't think any industry is as welcoming to immigrants as restaurant industry is. So most of the friends and people that I know, they come here to make a living. When they are coming in, most of them don't even know much about the welfare system. So they're coming in to work and pay taxes and make a better living. And I think we should care because, like I said, it's a human issue.
Very well said. Angela, Jacob, anything to add before we sign off?
I would just say that, and Atur couldn't say it better with regards to the human factor, but it's also an economic factor. They are a very important engine to the restaurant industry. I mean, it's more than just the workforce, and 27% of the workforce in Texas is immigrant, but it's the families of that workforce, is the owners, is the patrons, the guests, but it's so much more. I mean, everyone now measures how vibrant a city is by how many ethnic restaurants it has, and to be able to keep that vibrancy on, I mean, you need immigration, and it's an issue of demographics as well. I mean, the workforce that we need, we have an aging population. The average age of the general American population is getting older, so we need more people. So again, if we're going to be making decisions and you want to ignore the human factor, all these decisions are being made on politics. Look at the economics of it and the benefits that the country as a whole and the economies of our different states benefit from it. So that alone, I think, should be a reason enough.
Absolutely. All right, Jacob, you've got the final word.
Our food depends on it. Really, our food supply depends on immigrants, and we need to get this solved because we need to eat.
Well said. So if you don't care about people, food, or our economy, I don't know how to reach you. But chances are, if you're viewing today, you're already with us. So thank you all so much. What a great discussion. Thank you to all of our panelists and all of our viewers. Ariel, I'll kick it over to you for anything I forgot.
No, that's it. Thank you so much, Kelsey and Jacob, Angelo, and Atur. Just want to remind everybody there is a 7 p.m. wind down tonight. It will be live on Facebook as well, if that works better for you. And at 9:45 a.m. on this stage, the Silicon Hill stage, we're going to have hiring techniques as our webinar title. So we hope to see you guys then. And thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. Bye, guys.